I remember that day like a wound that never healed. I was sitting on the hallway floor, hugging my knees to my chest, trying to disappear into the wallpaper. My mother stood in front of me, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her hands shaking. A half-empty wine glass still clenched between her fingers. "You ruined my life," she screamed. "I should have never had you." Her words weren't just sounds. They were daggers sharp, intentional, and unforgiving. I was 9, just 9. I didn't understand what I'd done. I had just spilled juice on her work laptop pan. Accident. I panicked. I cried. But I never expected that moment to become the breaking point for everything. It wasn't about the juice. It never was. That night was the first time I truly realized my mother hated me. Growing up, I always felt like something was off. My earliest memories weren't filled with bedtime stories, cuddles, or Sunday morning pancakes. They were quiet, cold mornings, the sound of slamming doors, her laughter on the phone with friends, only to turn around and snap at me for breathing too loudly. I used to think maybe this is just how all moms are, strict, distant, unsmiling. But then I saw how my best friend Jamie's mom treated her, softly brushing her hair before school, packing her lunch with little notes that said, "Have a great day, sweetheart." I remember watching, mesmerized, as if witnessing a scene from a movie. When Jamie's mom caught me staring, she smiled gently and asked, "Would you like to stay for dinner, honey?" I said yes, just to delay going home. My mom was only 18 when she had me. My father, he vanished before I was born. I didn't even know his name until I was 12. I came into the world unexpected, unwanted, and my existence seemed to be the permanent stain on my mother's youth. She would often say things like, "I could have gone to college. I should be living in New York right now. I was supposed to have a life, not this." And every time, her eyes would flick toward me like I was the life she never chose. She didn't hit me. Not really. But neglect cuts differently. It's the kind where you sit in the school auditorium during your first play and scan the crowd, only to realize no one came to see you. The kind where you nurse a 102-degree fever alone under a thin blanket because she's too busy with the date night to come check on you. The kind where you hear her in the next room, laughing with strangers, while your stomach growls for dinner that never came. But the real turning point, the one where everything shattered into something darker, it came the summer before I turned 10. She started dating a man named Troy. At first, I was hopeful, stupidly hopeful. I thought, maybe things will change now. Maybe she'll be happy. Maybe we'll be a family. Troy was charming. He brought flowers when he came over. He complimented her cooking though she barely cooked. And he called me kiddo in this overly cheerful voice that never quite reached his eyes. But within weeks, things shifted. He moved in. And suddenly, I didn't belong in my own home. I wasn't allowed in the living room when they watched movies. My bedtime became earlier. He said kids shouldn't be up when adults are relaxing. I was told to knock before entering the kitchen if they were in there. My food portions got smaller. My voice, quieter. And my mother, she just let it happen. No, she liked it. She liked how he took control. How he disciplined. How he brought order to the house. But he wasn't just strict. He was cruel. One night, he called me a mooching little burden. I had asked if I could join them at the table for takeout. He didn't even look up from his plate when he said it. "You contribute nothing. You're not even supposed to be here." I turned to my mom, begging for her to say something, anything. Instead, she rolled her eyes and sighed. "Just go to your room, okay?" I walked away with burning eyes and a trembling lip, hearing her mutter under her breath, "He's not wrong." That sentence has echoed in my mind for years. I hear it even now sometimes, in the quiet, before I fall asleep. By the time I started 5th grade, I had stopped talking in school. My teachers noticed. But every parent-teacher meeting ended with my mother saying I was just dramatic, or looking for attention. I was shrinking. From the outside, I was just another quiet, awkward kid. But inside, I was unraveling. One day, I stayed after class to help my teacher, Mrs. O'Hara, organize some books. She gently asked if everything was okay at home. I wanted to say so much. I wanted to scream no. It's not. I feel invisible. I feel like a mistake. But instead, I smiled and said, "I'm fine." Because what else could I say? If anyone knew, it would only make her angrier. And angering my mom was dangerous not because she'd hit me, but because she'd leave me. Emotionally, mentally, and maybe even physically. That fear controlled everything I did. The day I truly broke inside came a few weeks later. Troy had a friend over, some loud, greasy man who smelled like beer and smoke. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. My after-school program got canceled early due to a power outage. I walked in through the back door quietly like I always did, and I overheard them talking in the kitchen. His friend asked, "You ever think about having a real kid someday?" Troy laughed. "I already live with the mistakes someone else left behind. That's enough for me." Then he added, "If she wasn't such a mess, I say put her in foster care and be done with it." My mom didn't say a word. Not one. She just sipped her wine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and wondered what it would feel like to be wanted, to be held, to be told, "I'm glad you're here." I wondered what life would be like if I didn't exist. Would she be in New York? Married? Famous? Happy? Was her misery really my fault? These thoughts haunted me every night, and they still do sometimes. Things escalated one winter morning, just after Christmas. We had no tree, no gifts, no dinner. My mom said we couldn't afford it, but Troy had just bought himself a new gaming console. I got nothing, not even a Merry Christmas. I cried quietly that night, under my blanket, clutching a tattered teddy bear that was the only thing I still owned from when I was a toddler. The next day, I spilled orange juice on her laptop. It wasn't intentional. I was just trying to clean the table like she'd asked me to. The glass slipped from my hand and exploded over her keyboard. She screamed like I'd set the house on fire. That's when she said it. Her voice cracked, but not from sadness, from rage. "You ruined my life. I should have never had you." She threw the soaked laptop across the room. I froze. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, something inside me turned cold. That was the night I stopped calling her mom. Not to her face, of course. I wasn't brave enough. But in my head, she became her. Just her. Not a mother. Not a protector. Not anything sacred or warm. Just a woman who regretted me. A woman who saw me as the chains around her ankles. After that, things got worse. She started locking the fridge at night. Said I was sneaking too much food, even though I barely ate. She removed the light bulb from my bedroom. She stopped washing my clothes. Once, she even left me at the grocery store. By accident. I waited for 2 hours before a cashier called the police. When she finally came back, she blamed me for not keeping up. "I'm not your babysitter," she said. I wanted to scream. "You're supposed to be my mother." But I said nothing. I always said nothing. The day I finally spoke up, I thought everything would change. And it did. But not in the way I hoped. It happened during parent-teacher night in 6th grade. Mrs. O'Hara, my kind, observant teacher, had grown concerned. She noticed the bruises under my eyes from lack of sleep, the way my clothes hung awkwardly on my too-thin frame, and the way I flinched whenever someone raised their voice. She asked my mother gently, "Has everything been okay at home?" I watched from the hallway, peeking through the open door. I already knew how this would go. My mom tilted her head and laughed. "Oh, she's just sensitive. Always has been. She reads too much into things. You know how kids are." But then, something unexpected happened. Mrs. O'Hara didn't smile. She didn't nod along politely like everyone else usually did. She frowned. She's quiet, withdrawn. When I asked if she's okay, she says she's fine. But her eyes say something different. "Has she been eating well?" My mom's tone sharpened instantly. "Excuse me, she seems underweight. And she fell asleep twice in class last week." "I'm just worried," Mrs. O'Hara said carefully. That night, after we left the school, I braced myself in the car. I thought she would yell. I thought she'd punish me for making her look bad. Instead, she said nothing until we pulled into the driveway. Then, she turned off the engine, stared at me through the dark windshield, and said, "If you ever tell anyone about what goes on in this house, I swear to God I will make sure no one believes you." Her voice was steady, deadly calm. I believed her. But even after that, something inside me had shifted. For the first time, I realized other people saw the cracks. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. So, I started documenting things. At night, under the covers, I wrote down every cruel word she said to me. Every time I was left alone without dinner. Every time Troy accidentally shoved me too hard. I kept the notebook hidden under a loose floorboard in my closet. It became my only friend. Months passed. My 12th birthday came and went without so much as a happy birthday. The notebook grew thicker. I started going to the library every day after school, saying I needed it for homework. But really, it was just to stay away from home longer. The librarian, Mrs. Patel, was kind. She'd always smile and offer me cookies from her drawer. One day, I finally accepted. She asked, "How's your mom?" I hesitated, then lied. "Busy." But I think she knew. Adults always say kids don't know what's going on. But really, it's the adults who pretend not to see. When I was 13, everything finally reached a boiling point. Troy had gotten laid off from his job. The tension in the house thickened like smoke. My mom was furious, mostly at me. Somehow. One evening, she stormed into my room. She was red-faced, clearly drunk. "This is your fault," she hissed. I blinked, confused. What is my life, my misery? The fact that I'm stuck here with nothing but bills and a brat who eats like a parasite. I froze. I couldn't even cry anymore. I just stared at her. Then she did something she'd never done before. She slapped me hard. The sound rang in my ears like thunder. I staggered backward and hit the dresser, knocking over a glass of water. I remember touching my cheek in stunned silence, waiting for her to apologize. She didn't. She turned and left the room like nothing happened. That night, I packed a small bag. Not because I planned to run away, but because I didn't want to die in that room. Yes, die. That's what it felt like. The next day at school, I showed Mrs. O'Hara the bruise. She gasped and asked what happened. I looked her straight in the eye and whispered, "She hit me." The words felt like a betrayal, but also a release. For the first time, I told someone the truth. And that changed everything. Within hours, Child Protective Services was called. I was taken to the nurse's office, where I waited for two men in button-down shirts and serious expressions to arrive. They asked me questions. So many questions. I told them everything. The notebook, I handed it over. Mrs. O'Hara cried when they took me away in the car. I thought maybe this was the beginning of something better. But things don't get better that easily. They placed me in emergency foster care that same night. A small house with two other girls, both quiet, both broken in different ways. The foster mother, Maria, was kind. But I didn't trust kindness. Not yet. The social worker, Mr. Lee, told me my mom would be investigated, that I'd probably be in care for a while. But I didn't want a while. I wanted safety, permanence, peace. Weeks passed, then months. Court hearings came and went. My mother never showed up to the first one, or the second. She didn't fight for custody. In fact, she told the judge, she wants to go. Let her. She's been nothing but a burden since the day she was born. I heard those words with my own ears. I was in the hallway. The door was cracked. Even now, that sentence repeats in my head like a mantra. After that, the system shifted me around. 3 foster homes in 6 months. Each time, I arrived with fewer belongings. Each time, I was a little quieter, a little colder. But something else began to grow inside me. Not just sadness, anger. Anger that I wasn't protected. Anger that no one saw what was happening earlier. Anger that she got to live her life, child-free now, probably with Troy, sipping wine and pretending I never existed. But what hurt the most? I still wanted her to love me. That craving never went away. It made me hate myself. When I turned 15, I got placed with a long-term foster family, the Turners. They were older, no, biological kids of their own. They weren't perfect, but they tried. They gave me space, they listened. They let me sleep with the light on. They never raised their voices. And slowly, I started to thaw. Mrs. Turner-Lore once told me, "You don't have to be anything you're not here. Just be." That sentence brought me to tears. It was the first time anyone ever said I could just exist without earning my place. One rainy afternoon, I got a letter in the mail from her. No return address. Just my name in her messy handwriting. My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short. "I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. Freedom. A new family. Just remember you ruined mine." That was it. No love, Mom. No apology. Just another accusation. I read it over and over again. Numbed. Then I burned it in the fireplace. Laura saw me and asked what it was. Junk mail, I lied. But that night, I cried harder than I had in years, because despite everything, some part of me still wanted her to say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you." But she never did. By 16, I was in therapy. It wasn't easy. I didn't open up right away. But eventually, the sessions became a lifeline. I learned how trauma rewires your brain. I learned that I wasn't responsible for her pain. I learned that children don't ruin lives, adults make choices. And more importantly, by the time I turned 18, I had spent over 6 years outside of my biological mother's home. 6 years of rebuilding piece by piece the identity she tried to erase. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. I graduated high school with honors. Mrs. O'Hara came to my graduation. She brought flowers and hugged me so tightly I thought I might break in the best way possible. Laura and Mr. Turner were in the front row, teary-eyed, clapping like proud parents, but I kept scanning the crowd despite everything. Despite logic, despite years of therapy and self-affirmation, I still looked for her. She wasn't there. Of course, she wasn't there. Still, the absence stung like salt in an old wound. After graduation, I got accepted into a state university. I planned to study psychology, maybe even become a therapist myself one day. I wanted to help kids like me. I wanted to be the adult I never had. Laura hugged me when I opened my acceptance letter. She said, "I always knew you were going to change lives." I smiled, but part of me wondered, whose life changed mine? The woman who broke me, or the people who helped me heal? Maybe both. The summer before college, I started working part-time in a bookstore. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where the silence felt like a comfort, not a punishment. One afternoon, while stocking the self-help section, I saw her. I froze. She was older, thinner, but unmistakably her. She had a shopping bag on her arm and sunglasses perched on her head like she still lived in her 20s. Troy wasn't with her. I ducked behind a display shelf. My hands were shaking. My manager, Dave, noticed me trembling and asked if I was okay. I wasn't. Not even close. I left through the back door, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. That night, I didn't sleep. The memories came flooding back. Her voice, her screams, the way she used to call me a mistake, the slap. The nights I cried into my pillow, the locked fridge, the silence. But then another memory came. That time I laughed so hard at Mr. Turner's bad joke I almost choked. That time Laura taught me how to make lemon cake and kissed my forehead when I burned it. That time Mrs. O'Hara told me I was brave. That time I said, out loud, I didn't ruin anything. She did. A week later, I saw her again, this time. She came into the store while I was working the register. There was no escaping it. She stepped into my line with a cheap paperback and a box of tea. When she looked up and saw me, her face paled. We both froze for a second. The air felt too thick to breathe. Then she cleared her throat and said, "So it's you?" I didn't respond. She added, "You look different." Still, I said nothing. She paid. I gave her her change. Our fingers brushed slightly, and I instinctively recoiled. She sighed. "Look, I didn't come here to fight." "Good," I said. It was the first word I spoke to her in 6 years. She tilted her head. I know I wasn't perfect. I let out a bitter laugh. Not perfect as leaving the oven on or forgetting a birthday. "You destroyed me." She blinked. "You're still angry." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not angry. I'm just not yours anymore." There it was. The sentence that cracked something open inside both of us. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, eyes welling with something that almost looked like regret. "You think," she whispered, "you'd ever want to talk, really talk?" I looked her in the eye. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something human. Not maternal, not warm, but real. Maybe guilt. Maybe shame. Maybe loneliness. I took a breath. "I don't owe you that," I said quietly. And I meant it. That night, I called Laura and told her what happened. She was silent for a moment, then asked, "Are you okay?" "Yes," I replied. "Actually, I think I am." College was hard at first. I had social anxiety. I struggled to trust people. Roommates overwhelmed me. Parties terrified me. But I pushed through. I found a support group on campus, other former foster kids, survivors of abuse, trauma, neglect. We met every Thursday and shared our stories. One night, I read an essay I'd written in English class. It was titled, "The Child Who Wasn't Chosen." I told them about the juice incident, about the slap, about the notebook, about the silence that shaped me. When I finished reading, a girl named Mariah, soft-spoken, nervous, kind, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not broken," she said. That sentence stuck with me. I wrote it on a post-it note and stuck it to my mirror. Years passed. I got my degree. I interned at a counseling center for youth in foster care. I moved into a small studio apartment with too many plants, and a creaky floor, and the kind of silence I finally loved. I hadn't heard from her since the bookstore. Until one day, I received a letter, a real one this time. It read, "I've been thinking about that day at the store. You were right. I hurt you in ways I don't know how to explain or fix. But if nothing else, I need you to know, it wasn't your fault. It never was. I was lost. I took it out on you. And I live with that guilt every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just peace. There was no return address again. But this time, I didn't cry. I folded the letter and tucked it inside the very same notebook I used to write in as a child. The one I retrieved from the Turner's attic after college. And then I wrote one final entry. I was never the problem. I was never the burden. I was a child, and she was broken. But I survived her. And that is my legacy. Now, I'm 24. I work with at-risk teens, most of whom don't believe they'll live past 25. I tell them about a girl who used to sleep in the dark with no dinner, no warmth, no love, and how she still made it. I tell them healing isn't linear, that forgiveness isn't required, that survival is not shameful, it's heroic. And every time I see a flicker of hope in their eyes, I remember little me, the girl who thought she ruined everything, the girl who became everything she needed. People often ask if I ever reconnected with my mother. The truth, I don't need to. Because I found peace. Not in her apology, but in my refusal to let her define me. She said I ruined her life, but I saved mine. And that's the real story.